The people have spoken. In the comment section of my Talking to the Zenless Zone Zero community, this was the one video that was requested so much that I felt like I had to hop on this immediately. Let's talk. Why are fighting game players so easily drawn to Zenless Zone Zero? I didn't see this as quite the parallel at first, but upon reading your experiences, the community has noticed that if there is a demographic of players that end up making ZZZ their gacha of choice, it's always fighting game players. On the outside looking in, this may be odd, but as a professional fighting game player, I can give some input on exactly why this happens. I'm gonna break this into specific sections so it's easier to follow along. And I will try to keep my fighting game lingo down as much as I can, but if I use a word that might be foreign to you guys, I will explain it in the best way I possibly can. Fighting game players love doing cool shit. If the cool doesn't look flashy, then who are we truly trying to impress? Hit effects are very important in not just fighting games, but any games that have a combat system at all. Video games are meant to draw in the player with specific visuals despite the game's graphical capabilities. In fighting games, hit effects are used to display just how impactful a move is. Imagine getting hit with a Hadouken and when it impacts the opponent, there was no splash to signify the impact of the burst. Imagine getting your jaw rocked by a Shoryuken level 3 super and there was no art or visual effects to signify the weight of what just happened. These may seem like non-serious details, but for a fighting game player, everything our characters do is enhanced by these gestures. Outside of character designs, which we'll talk about later, our characters' attacks have to look, sound, and animate in ways that draw us in to become connected to the character in the first place. If your combat ain't flashy and your animations ain't flashier, we don't really want to play your game. Zenless Zone Zero does not shy away from this, as their attention to detail is so strong that it genuinely feels like the designers of the game made fighting games in another life. Miyabi doesn't just slice through opponents with a sword. You can hear the swiftness of her blade slicing through the air with blue fiery visual effects to signify the scorching that encapsulates each cut through the enemy hollows. Bernice and Evelyn are both excellent characters that signify the examples of how to make flames not only look good in combat, but how to also make them fit their combat styles uniquely despite being within similar elemental classes. These things draw us in heavily, and ZZZ is first in class. Like stated before, we love doing cool, but it's pretty lame if your game doesn't offer enough variety that allows us to just show just how unique we actually are and how we approach the game. Zenless Zone Zero's combat is so fluid in what you can do that players are able to play agents differently. When you are watching a tournament set or a combo video in certain fighting games, you can immediately tell which player is playing based on the moves they choose, the pacing in which they play, and the combos they opt to do, whether they are conventional or not. Gachas tend to follow a formulaic gameplay trend that, while still can make them fun, doesn't allow for players to showcase how unique their approach to the game or certain characters actually are. This is also how character specialists, people who specialize in one single character in a game, come to make a name for themselves in fighting games. The more we learn about Zenless Zone Zero's combat, the more we identify with the fighting games we endlessly grind. It's extremely telling that outside of the combat guides that the game offers, its free training mode is set up in a way that emulates a fighting game's training mode, where you have a plethora of settings you can change to pretty much streamline the combo you want to practice in ZZZ, or even the entire team composition you formulated. There are some combos and character transitions in Zenless Zone Zero that have such a small window to be performed that it rewards time invested, execution, and creativity to the fullest. This, in my opinion, is what is missing in a lot of gacha games. But most gacha games do not have such a heavy emphasis on combat and attention to detail in the first place. This is likely the main reason we approach Zenless Zone Zero and gravitate to it as our gacha game of choice, as it has pretty much no ceiling at all when it comes to just how expressive and unique the game allows combat to be. Not all professional players play Chun-Li the same, not all professional players play Fox the same, and not all professional players play Nina Williams the same. It's all unique. and that's what matters the most. I believe this is also enhanced by the fact that disk drives and W engines present so many different ways to build characters that players will have a hard time actually having characters that have the same stats as each other. This diversity in the character building aspect of the game enables the game to have its own charm and flavor, making every player's approach to the game different. Fighting games are known for a variety of character archetypes for players to choose from. You have your extremely fast and dynamic fighters that typically have low HP to offset their strengths. You have large, heavy characters that excel in power but lose speed. You have characters that are powerful at keeping opponents away with long-range projectiles but suffer when the opponent gets close to them. You can make a character out of a human, animal, hybrid of both, angel, demon, mech, almost anything really. It all boils down to the creativity of the developer, and I believe Smash actually has the most diverse character archetypes of any fighting game. As someone who is top level at Smash Bros specifically, Zenless Zone Zero appeals to me because of this very reason. Jane Doe is a character I relate to Fox, who has been a main of mine for many years outside of the latest installment in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. They are both incredibly fast and very punishing. When they start a combo, they often tear their opponents to shreds, and I love that. I enjoy playing characters that are traditionally very fast-paced, that reward proper offense and of course good decision making in game. Something that I believe Zenless Zone Zero does better is making characters engaging and on average fun to watch and play. Smash sometimes falls into this trap of making characters too true to their original source material, and that does not always translate well to a fighting game. I mean, look at Steve, look at Sonic, look at Min Min. I could keep going, I'm not gonna lie. Zenless Zone Zero pretty much creates their characters from the ground up, and they are original characters, and since this is not a game that is PvP, it is much easier for them to make characters absolutely busted in ways that are not only fulfilling to play, but cover a wide variety of character archetypes in a healthy way. It is a game that benefits from having something for everyone, no matter how wild the movesets get. Offense and defense go hand in hand. One cannot exist without the other. Fighting games since the dawn of time have rewarded players for knowing when to strike and knowing how to block. Aggression is rewarded with proper spacing, aka how to hit a move with enough distance to remain safe from a counterattack, and defense is rewarded with not only knowing how to block, but how to stand right outside of a move's range so you can attack after the opponent misses. Being proficient in both of these is what separates a good player from a pro player. Pro players know how to block, and they celebrate active defense. Pro players also know when to get aggressive, and their spacing is immaculate. Zenless Zone Zero utilizes traditional fighting game mechanics that excite us, that come from that genre. It's one thing to get down the timing for a parry in ZZZ, which is extremely satisfying, especially with the sound design that accompanies parrying, but knowing when to time a combo that has high execution or perform a character switch during a specific move transition from another character creates a rush in your mind. Zenless Zone Zero has a lot of dynamic enemies, and the bosses can get even crazier. Understanding matchups between these enemies and specific characters is really satisfying, as not every character fights the same or punishes enemies in the same fashion. Knowing when to switch in place of a traditional parry or dodge can make all of the difference in getting optimal damage or avoiding taking a devastating blow. Fighting games are all about decision making, pacing, and your reaction time. ZZZ challenges all these facets of the fighting game player's mind while remaining a PvE game. It's not even PvP. Fighting a bot is so much different than fighting a human, as fighting games tend to be emotional endeavors due to this factor. But the fact that ZZZ can encapsulate these feelings regardless shows that the developers understand combat at its core and how to translate it at top quality. Nobody wants to play a slow game. I'm gonna keep it real. If the pacing of your combat is slow, it will be the quickest way for your game to not only be looked at sideways, but to die immediately. Action-oriented games do not benefit from appearing to play as if they were in Itachi Tsukiyomi 24/7. It makes the game look less flashy, feels less rewarding overall to be proficient in, and doesn't give that high octane feeling that a game with a heavy combat focus needs to give. It doesn't make sense to make a fighting game that is slow. It's quite literally counterproductive. It makes no sense. It's ass backwards. Zenless Zone Zero's pacing is incredible and fits the needed dynamic that makes these games addictive to play in the first place. This one goes without saying. Fighting games historically have exceptional music. No, I am not talking about good music. I'm talking about godlike music. Tekken is known for its soundtracks. Classic Street Fighter music is still referenced and used to this day. You can literally find fighting game music used in lots of shorts and videos today that have nothing to do with fighting games. They are legit timeless. Zenless Zone Zero's music is so versatile and good that if you slap them into one of these games, some of the tracks would feel right at home. For us, music is what helps create the atmosphere of a level outside of its environmental design. It's what we hear blasting out of the speakers in the stadiums and at the major tournaments that we compete in. It helps set the tone for the severity of a match and becomes synonymous with some of the characters from a particular franchise. Hoyoverse crafted the urban futuristic setting of Zenless Zone Zero and created a soundtrack that not only fits it perfectly, but intensifies aspects of the combat that go beyond just what buttons the player is pressing. We don't like playing easy games. Nothing irks us more than playing a game that has been made extremely simplistic without good reason. It's dumb. Fighting games traditionally reward time invested and execution. When it comes to competition, we want the best player to win, and it is definitely obvious that the player who won was a cut above the rest. When you lower the skill ceiling dramatically, that there is no nuance for us, it will turn us off of the game quickly. This doesn't mean games have to be unnecessarily hard for the sake of it. There are some mechanics that were outdated and certain things that were unnecessarily difficult that have been changed to accommodate and make fighting games more streamlined. Changes like this are okay, but at its core, a fighting game should be understandable enough to get into, but extremely rewarding for those who master them. Making the game easy to master creates a game with no meaningful skill ceiling, which is not impressive at all. I can say firsthand, as someone who is a pro at fighting games, that I am learning the inner intricacies of Zenless Zone Zero, and it's blowing me away. Kate showed me how he melted a Shield defense boss in 13 seconds with Alice, Yuzuha, and Jane. I didn't even know it was possible. He tried to show me tight window executions for Yizhuan that opened up how deep that character's combat is without me knowing, that was even possible. Like, I had no idea. The rabbit hole of exploration and difficulty goes deep with ZZZ, and outside of what we can control, Battle Tower and Deadly Assault will give even the most seasoned ZZZ players a run for their money. We like this. We love this. Risk reward is significant in any combat focused game. For those who may not know what that is, let me break it down for you. In Super Smash Bros., if I use a move like Mario's jab attack, I know it's fast and very hard to counterattack, making the risk of using it low, but it won't KO my opponent or do a lot of damage, making the reward for landing it very low, right? However, if I use a move like Bowser's forward smash, I know the risk is high because the move is slow, making it pretty easy to counterattack or avoid. But the reward is also incredibly high if I land it because the move is extremely strong. And it'll of course kill the opponent, right? Think of Falcon Punch, high risk, high reward. Now think of Steve's jab, low risk, high reward. This sounds balanced, right? Yeah, I know. Complete bullshit. Anyway, Zenless Zone Zero has this formulaic design in its combat, and even though it doesn't function the complete same because the game is PvE, it still upholds a certain quality as if it was PvP based. Where there is a game or even a show, there's also going to be a community. The fighting game community is a grassroots community that came from a time before esports teams, which I played for Counterlogic Gaming if you guys didn't know that back in the day, sponsors, streams, and most modern technology we have today. Like most things in the early 2000s, we gathered in forums to discuss our games and before online play was readily available like it is today. We would travel hours to attend tournaments and play each other in person. The best way to play fighting games, even to this day with online infrastructure, is offline due to how executional heavy these games are and the amount we get to connect through learning more about each other face to face, sharing techniques we discovered, helping each other with character matchups, and of course, just bonding over a shared interest. The offline presence is still very much alive today in an era where online play is the norm and should pretty much render the offline experience useless, like, you know, in many other gaming genres. While Zenless Zone Zero is not an offline playable game or even PvP or even requires players to travel to interact with each other, it's still a game that has a unified community that goes to bat for their game at all times. This is respectable in the eyes of the fighting game community, as we are pretty critical and harsh of our own genre, as we just want the game to be as good as possible and of course grow. And so seeing the Zenless Zone Zero community kind of operate in the same way, it's relatable, so to speak. ZZZ players understand that their game is combat rich and full of tech, so seeing players eagerly share these things to teach each other is a very relatable social aspect of both types of players. The parallels between both genres are pretty funny, but Zenless Zone Zero literally takes a lot of historical philosophies from traditional fighting games and integrates it into its own combat. The reason we loved Zenless Zone Zero is because it relates to a genre we have poured our blood, sweat, and emotion into for most of our lives. The most meaningful times of my life come from competing in fighting games, from when I was bad at them to where I am now. You can watch my story in this video, and I'll have a link to it in the description below. The journey is one I wouldn't trade for the world, and so getting to feel flavors of the genre I hold closest to my heart in a game I discovered a newfound love for makes it really easy to play Zenless Zone Zero and love it past it being some quote-unquote goon or gacha that people will label it on the surface without doing any real exploration past the visual aesthetics of its characters. Talk about lazy as shit, right? Not to say fighting game players don't love hot characters. I mean, have you seen Cammy, Mai, Chun-Li? You know, if you just do a little bit of research past the characters being hot, you typically will find that the game is godlike. It's amazing. That's just naming a few characters, of course, by the way. There are so many more in fighting games, you guys wouldn't even believe it. Hopefully this gives insight into why Zenless Zone Zero is the main gacha of choice for fighting game players and why it resonates so well with us. I say this all to say, Zenless Zone Zero devs, please make a fighting game. Like platform fighter or traditional fighter, y'all take either, I'm not gonna lie. And please let me help. Thank you guys so much for watching. I greatly appreciate it. If you like this video, be sure to follow the channel. Be sure to subscribe, please. And of course, like and comment. It helps out a ton as I am aspiring to reach over 50K again. Please. And then onward to 100K. Would greatly appreciate all the support. Let me know what you guys want to see in the next video. And of course, catch me on my Twitch stream, twitch.tv/NAKAT. Take it easy. Peace out. Much love. Deuces.